Hello, I'm Fernando Sabeta, Sales and Tech Service Manager for Altech in South America. Let's talk about global economy and graphite electrode industry, a review for the last quarter of 2024. The World Bank just recently released the global outlook, and the world growth is projected to remain steady at 2.7% for the year 2005-2006. A slowdown in the two major engines of the global economy, United States and China, is anticipated to be counterbalanced by strengthening growth in the other region. Emerging markets and developing economies are facing a range of growth prospects this year. In East Asia and Pacific, growth is expected to slow due to weak domestic demand in China and in Europe and Central Asia. However, risks to the outlook remain predominantly on the downside for all regions, primarily due to unfavorable shifts in global trade and other economic policies. Potential hazards include escalated conflicts, slower than expected growth in China and the US. Some regional prospects highlights. For the emerging markets and developing economies, mainly East Asia and Pacific and some Central Asian regions, are forecast to experience a slowdown, primarily due to slower growth in large economies, which weigh the broader regional outlook. For East Asia and Pacific, a slowdown is driven by a further deceleration in China due to weak domestic demand and continued slump in the property sector. For Middle East and North Africa, growth is expected to pick up based on the assumption of an unwinding of oil production, cuts in the associated rising energy production, and exports among oil exporting economy. For Latin America and Caribbean, a more modest acceleration is envisaged, partly driven by a rebound in Argentina following 2 consecutive years of contraction. For Sub-Saharan Africa, growth is also anticipated to pick up, where activity will be supported by lower inflation, easing financial conditions. About commodity price, aggregate commodity price declined by approximately 3% in 2024. Primarily due to improving supply conditions for energy and food commodities, despite ongoing geopolitical tensions. Prices are anticipated to decrease further throughout the forecast period. A more significant drop in oil prices is expected in 2025 and 2026, as production increases while global oil demand growth remains tepid. For the global trade in goods and services, a resurgence in 2004, expanding by an estimated 2.7% following a growth the previous year. This uptick was partially fueled by precautionary inventory accumulation in response to potential trade disruption, including those caused by dock workers' strikes in the US and in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as newly announced and proposed higher tariffs in the United States. Shipping and freight rates increased in the second half of 2024, driven by maritime transport disruption and heightened shipping volumes. The average price of Brent crude oil, which was 8% per barrel in 2024, is forecast to fall to $72 per barrel in 2025, and probably to $71 per barrel in 2026. As a robust steel consumption growth in major economies more than counterbalances the effect of geopolitical tension. Market participants remain cautious and concerned over the potential impact of President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on global commodity demands. Trump's plans to impose tariffs on imported goods such as steel, aluminum, and copper have sparked worries about the ripple effect on the global economy. Iron ore price for cargoes with 62% iron content remained instead above $181 per ton in late January, maintaining a sideways trend for over a week amid ongoing uncertainty regarding U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff plans. The Chinese Coal Transportation Association reported that the coal output is projected to grow by 1.5% to 4.82 billion tons by 2025, following a record-setting year in 2024. Steel scrap CFR Turkey. In last November, the import volume increased by 13.3% year on year, and to month to 1.76 million metric tons, according to the data provided by the Turkey Statistical Institute. Talk about some commodities. The nickel price is market oversupply and expect to continue in 2025. It expects forecasting a little momentum for price. About aluminum, the futures expect to drop to 2,060.30 per ton, retreating from recent high of $2,060.90 per ton. Copper, traders are very ahead of the February deadline for the first round of tariffs affecting China, Mexico, and Canada, as investors are waiting, expecting to reduce due to the close of China market for the Lunar New Year holiday. The zinc futures fell below 2,800 per ton. The zinc is expected to supply and demand remaining relatively similar from 2024 to 2025. Ferroalloys, due to increase in price of imported ore and concerns about the availability of high-grade ore, domestic silicon manganese price are likely to rise slightly in the near future. Indian ferrosilicon price decreased by $21 per ton, week on week, compared to the previous assessment on January 20. On the freight side, the Israel-Hamas ceasefire initiated recently in the last 6 weeks poses a prolonged conflict and affects Houthi attacks on Red Sea. The ceasefire ongoing stability depends on future negotiation between Hamas and Israel. As shipping routes may reopen, there could be temporary congestion and increased rate, but long-term capacity normalization may lead to reduced freight price. Meanwhile, President Trump's new trade policies targets tariff on Mexico and Canada, with through investigation the way to assess U.S. manufacturing and trade dynamics which may delay tariff implementation. An early start to preliminary New Year demand is putting pressure on ex-Asia container rates to start the year, with price already starting from a Red Sea diversion elevated floor. Another interesting in the world of shipping is alliance reshuffle. Some companies are putting together a new alliance, like in the Ocean Network Express, HMM, and Yang Ming Marine Transportation, that creates the Premier Alliance. Another one at the same time, the world's largest shipping line, Mediterranean Shipping Company, has announced its own intention to develop an independent network. The Premier Alliance is formed after Hapag-Lloyd's departure for the alliance, and is set to join force with Maersk within the Gemini cooperation in February 2024. In 2024, the global production of crude steel for the 71 countries that report to the World Steel Association reached 144.5 million tons, making up 5.6% increase compared to the same month of 2023. The main regions that faced an increase was Europe and South America during the whole year. China's steel production recovered in December 2024, but overall production decreased by 1.7%. India, Germany, Turkey, Brazil, and Iran steel production continues to grow year to date. In 2024, China's steel production fell by 1.7% year on year to 1 billion tons, marking a 5-year low. Despite being the world's largest steel producer, China is grappling with significant challenges in its domestic market, including declining consumption, a slowing economy, and the structural issues with the industry. As a response, producers are increasing exports. Now, let's talk about some graphite electrode industry. In China, the domestic needle coke price remained steady in the second half of this year, even coal-based needle coke and oil-based needle coke. Calcined coke price held steady in January, reflecting a broader trend of stability in the market. In the low-sulfur petroleum coke sector, prices remain strong, contributing to the increase in the overall cost of graphite electrodes. According to recent report from ICSINO, the needle coke market indicates that the Moamine petrochemical needle coke production line has been relaunched and anticipates coke output in January. Notably, both of Sinopec's needle coke refineries are now operational. Also, according to ICSINO, recent price for graphite electrodes with diameters below 500 millimeters have shown a trend of rising from low levels. Some manufacturers affected by environmental protection policies have reduced it or halted production, leading to a decrease in market supply of small diameter graphite electrodes. Well, in conclusion, according to the World Bank, world growth is projected to remain steady at 2.7% for the years 2025-26. A slowdown in the two major engines of the global economy, the US and China, is anticipated to be counterbalanced by strengthening growth in other regions. Uncertainty regarding US President Donald Trump's tariffs plan, which could impact global commodity trading. Markets are also exercising caution as they approach the February 1st deadline for the first round of tariffs aimed at China, Mexico, and Canada. A key challenge for regulators in both China and globally will be balancing domestic and international interest in the steel sector in 2025. Chinese steel exports surged to a record high of 110.72 million tons, an increase of 22.7% from 2023. An early start to preliminary New Year demand is putting pressure on ex-Asia container rates to start the year, with price already starting for a Red Sea diversion elevated floor. North American shippers continue to front-load ahead of expected tariffs hikes. In this last year, Altec Group personnel participated in some technical papers presentation in ABM Week, ISTEC, MENA, and others, with the showing the expertise and also some feedback on the market side. And that's it for now. This was the last quarter review. Thank you and bye-bye.